All right. Well, good morning, Peacemakers.
Good morning.
Glad I got to say that at least one time. Our fearless leader is out this morning, so you were stuck with me. But he has promised to be back Wednesday night, so you can look forward to that. Thank you. So we're on lesson 9. Take 2 or 3 more with you, and as we talked about, kind of in this class. If we were to take what we've learned, what is the absolute best way I can be reconciled to my brother? Mano a mano. Absolutely, that's the best way. Is there anything even better than that? You could just forget it completely, right? Could just let it go. But if you need reconciliation, the best way is mano a mano. Absolutely. And this process, as we talked about, is outlined in Matthew chapter 18. So I think it's a reminder. Let's open our Bibles there. And if somebody would, read Matthew 18, 15 through 20. Let's read Matthew 18, 15 through 20. If somebody pick that up for me.
If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him. If he listens to you, he has done your brother. But if he does not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of his. If he refuses to listen to you, charge to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Again I say to you, that 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, that it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I.
Thank you. I think it's kind of interesting. This is not a new concept. This is not just something brand new. Look over in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse 15. If somebody would read that. You can kind of find the same thing over in the Old Testament.
One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits, but by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established.
Absolutely. So we kind of have this principle that if we can't ignore it, if we can't be reconciled, just mano a mano, one-on-one with our brother, then we can take others along with us. So I want to start off when we kind of open the class this morning of, if we've gotten to this point, we'll have to select somebody to take with us. How are we going to select this person? Who's this person going to be? How are we going to choose them? What would you say about that?
I would take into consideration this individual and who do they have a lot of respect for. You know, I think it'd be good to take someone with you that you know that they have respect for.
Yeah.
You certainly wouldn't want to take someone with you that they didn't.
Correct.
You know.
Yeah.
So I think you certainly want to consider that.
Somebody that kind of both parties
Yeah.
respect. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What else? What else are you choosing? What else are you looking for in somebody as a reconciler?
I thought of the verse that says, "You who are spiritual, restore." And so someone who's spiritually minded, who you have respect for in a spiritual sense, that you can trust that they would come at it from that point of view versus either of the other persons.
Absolutely. Somebody who is spiritually minded, somebody that you know is going to look to God's word and is going to be fair in that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Novice, somebody that's experienced individual.
Okay.
And both parties would agree, probably one party, hopefully, my team or your team.
Correct.
Somebody that's a good mediator.
Correct. Yeah, the example there I thought of is, me and Michael have talked about this in this class. Me and him got something going on, and we choose. Hey, we're going to have to choose. We're going to choose somebody to help us reconcile this, and we're going to choose. Makes sense to us. We're going to choose an elder. Well, which elder are we going to choose to help us reconcile? Yeah, it's probably going to be Mr. Jeff Barry over there. So if I'm walking this meeting, me, him, and Mickey, I'm probably going to feel like I'm ganged up on a little bit there, right? Or if he's walking into it with my dad, he's going to feel a little ganged up on. It's not going to be. That's not the kind of relationship. It's not the kind of environment that's going to foster bringing down the temperature of the room and having a fair, work this out type of deal. So I think that's very true. The goal here is never to humiliate the other person. We're not here to shame them. We're not here to belittle them. We are here to reconcile. We are here to gain our brother. That's all we're looking for in this. We're looking for a resolution. Let's look at Proverbs 15 and verse 22. Somebody would read that. Proverbs 15 and verse 22.
Consultation, plans are frustrating, but with many consultants they succeed.
I think that's important because the person we choose can make or break this, right? I mean, it is certainly possible that we could choose somebody who's not going to be able to fix this. We choose somebody who's got the wrong attributes. We got somebody who's not spiritually mature, someone who's not experienced in this. They can be a detriment. Choose somebody who's very one-sided, who's not looking for God's way. They can bring this down. But if you choose the right person, they can absolutely diffuse it, get this solved, and get us moving along. And so who we choose and having that right advisor is so critical in this process, and it's very important. I think it's why it's important to take some time to who are we going to choose for that, for sure. Talk a little bit about it. I think it's interesting. The book talks a little bit about that the person that we choose should know us. This person that we choose should know us a little bit. Why would that be important? Why would it be important for this person to know us? Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I think it's interesting. The book says in the secular world, you might choose somebody who doesn't know you. That they would, because this idea of impartiality is just so important in that world to have somebody who's going to make a fair judgment, that they wouldn't know you at all. We use the kind of illustration, probably wouldn't choose our dad, but we do want to choose somebody who would know us, because here in the Christian, with Christians dealing with Christians, we would hope that whoever we choose, that their goal would be whatever God wants, whatever is a fair judgment, regardless if they know us or not. That they're going to put God's way in front of either me or Michael or whoever I'm having a conflict with. Their goal is going to be to put God's way, which is peace and reconciliation between two brothers, ahead of anything. You kind of probably wouldn't see that in the secular world, but I think you would see that here. If somebody knows you, they also might be willing to be a little more upfront with you. To say, hey, you're wrong here. You're going to have to fix this. You're going to have to, you're going to have to give a little on this situation. Both sides are going to have to give in. You're going to have to give in a little bit. And if they know you, they might be able to have that conversation with you a little easier, a little better. You might respect that coming from them as well. So I think that's kind of an important part of who you choose. And luckily, we have that here, and we strive to want to follow God, and I think that would work. Their commitment to God should far outweigh any partiality they have. Lesson also mentions that the presence of witnesses protects both parties from false accusations and misunderstandings. So, if you've ever seen the instance of maybe you go into the doctor and the nurse will come along with him. The nurse doesn't really do anything, but the nurse is there to just be a witness of what is going on. Well, if something, were to happen that shouldn't, then the nurse is there to be a witness, take notes, to know what's going on. Maybe at work meetings, if you have a meeting there and you think, oh, the temperature in the room is going to be a little high on that, maybe you ask somebody to sit in with you that is respected, and that can bring that down as well. And so I think that's kind of the idea of bringing one or two more along with you to kind of help in that process. It's just a good way to protect both parties. It's a good way to make sure everything's fair. It's a good way to make sure that peace is being worked on. I think it's also important to mention that when we approach our brother, we are not assigning blame. This is about resolution. This is about unity with our brother. We're not here to do the blame game. We're not here to make sure they understand just how bad they messed up, um, so they know how bad it is and how wrong they were. We're here to seek unity. We're here to seek peace in that. And that purpose is ensure that the process remains just one-sided, not just one-sided. So let's look at Galatians 6, 1 and 2. I want to take a look at Galatians 6, 1 and 2. Somebody would read that.
Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burden, and so fulfill the law of Christ.
And so I certainly understand the concept here that if we are to restore our brother, we are to restore it with a sense of gentleness. But what does it mean here when it says what is this warning that we should not be tempted? What does that say? What does that mean there? It says, I'm restoring my brother with gentleness, that I too make sure that I am not tempted. What do you think is meant by that?
You mentioned in the secular world, you would take someone with you maybe who is more on your side, or the person would be objective, be more of, I need to prove I'm right at all costs. And then you mentioned not assigning blame. So I've heard it, like, that you wouldn't be tempted to fall in the same sin that they're in, but I tend to think it's more of, you're not tempted to handle it in a worldly way. You know, I'm right about this, you need to put me in your place, kind of, these people on my side, you know. That would be our human nature. And it would be easy to do, in some cases, to do it that way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it is a kind of a nod to humility, kind of realizing that we've all sinned, we've all fallen short, and now I am been put in this place to talk, to my brother, to try to restore him. And let's not, as you said, let's not get to a level of I'm better than them. I'm going to tell them how it is and what they need to be doing. So if we restore them from a place of gentleness, that's going to require some humility on our part and realizing where that comes from. So I think that was
And it's kind of
excellent
sandwiched
said.
between gentleness and bearing one another's burdens. And if you think about, if someone's caught in a trespass or even just a conflict, if you think about like teaming up with them to bear that burden versus being in conflict with them, it increases the chances that we'll be more gentle than if we see the true enemy as Satan interfering in our relationship versus seeing the other person as the enemy. And we look at conflict as a way to kind of help one another do this and grow closer, that makes us more empathic and gentle too.
Absolutely. Very good. Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, just think about practical ways that we could slip myself if I was trying to address somebody. I mean, there's the sin, as you said, of pride. I wouldn't become this sin of being too harsh, the sin of gossiping about that with somebody else. There's a lot of opportunities. Anytime we think we've got the high road, there's a lot of opportunities to mess it up.
Absolutely.
So in some ways, I think that's why you take somebody very mature with you and talk about that, because there's a lot of ways you think you got the moral high ground. Beware, right? And so in my mind, that's the sense of what that verse is trying to get across. There's just a lot of ways that you can turn this ended up in a place where you don't want to be. It takes a lot of prayer and discernment to have the right heart all the way through the process.
Yeah, very well said. For sure. Jumping around, think a little bit. I think we've talked about this, but I think it's important to make sure we cover it. Why does involving a third party diffuse tensions? So we're bringing in a third party. why or how is this person going to diffuse the tensions in the room and lead towards a coming together of peace, so to speak? What is this third party going to bring?
I get a different perspective on what the mistake is.
Yeah. Absolutely. Different perspective. Hey, absolutely. Maybe this isn't as big as you think. Maybe we can figure this out. For sure.
You know, if there's conflict, you and I have a conflict. Third party is, just by definition, is outside of that conflict. And so if things have gotten heated where it's difficult for us to see through that, that's definitionally why you bring in the third person. You're just not part of the conflict.
Correct.
So it kind of allows both parties to communicate what's going on without the filter of the personal relationship being clouded up.
Yep. And hopefully, if that person is someone who is respected and spiritually minded, then obviously both people will respond to that as what's going on, for sure.
I think the point about communication is good because lots of conflicts are centered on communication and breakdown. Or like in marriage counseling, I think out of the 6 or so couples I've seen, 5 of them, it was just definition of terms. The husband or wife said something, the other one heard something from that was not said. Because they know each other well, because they get in this loop of, well, no, what do you mean by that? That you bring a third party in who can listen to each. And if there is a miscommunication, say, hey, I think when he says this, he's really saying, this, and that can kind of defining those terms. Well, what do you mean when you say you need more support? Well, when they explain that, then both parties that are in conflict are coming at it with their own background and their own definition of words. And when you have a third party there, they can say, wait, I think this is what's being said. Does that change how you're understanding the situation? And conflict, when you do that, you see the tensions come down.
Yep. Absolutely.
It is interesting to me that both in Matthew and Deuteronomy, it says 1 or 2 witnesses.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about what are the circumstances where you might think about multiple parties. But I do think it's interesting, it's in both places. It doesn't just say take somebody else. Just take one, or you might even think about taking 2. I don't really know what the circumstances are where that might be advisable, but I do think it's interesting that Scripture says that in both places.
And I'm wondering, is it kind of just do you think like you're making that decision, or is it better to take one and then if maybe it's not going well, bring in another? Because I feel like the idea here is that you're always wanting to reconcile with as few people as possible.
Yeah.
And so, you start with one, maybe go to 2, or I don't know. Maybe if it's a really bad one, do you, you feel like it's going to take 2 to wrangle this? I don't know.
That may be the degree of context.
Could be. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Could be. For sure.
As long as you got odd numbers, somebody's gonna be more something one way or the other. If you got 2 additional parties and one agrees with one side and the other with the other, you got a conflict.
Yeah. For sure.
I think, for instance, the conflict is between a man and a woman. It's good to have a man and a woman there.
You're very wise in your topic. That's good. For sure. For sure. Yep. Very good. The book, I know they didn't have the book, but the book talks a little bit about, I thought this was interesting, the reconciler might not have to be fully involved at first. I don't know if you thought of that, but kind of the situation I thought about it is, me and Michael are sitting in this room, we've called in this third party reconciler. Yes, Mr. Jeff Benge walks in. 2 spiritually minded people with a soft heart, is that going to be enough? Like, I see where this is going. I see the path this is going down. would that be enough for me or Michael or both of us to say, hey, maybe we can work on it on our own? Because that is still ultimately the best way, right? That is still ultimately the best way to be reconciled one-on-one. And maybe Jeff doesn't have to jump in immediately and learn all about the situation, spend all this time getting in. Maybe he walks in and says, hey guys, what do you think? And we say, hey, I think we can work on it on our own. I don't want to go down this path. I don't want to take it this far. Doesn't mean that's always going to happen. Maybe the tensions in the room are just too high. Maybe something's going on, and he'll have to jump in and get more involved.
Maybe even the threat of Jim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't mean that the wrong way, but like, if I thought it wasn't that big a deal, but you said, hey, I really think that we ought to get some, I think I'd like to call Jeff, and it would probably cause me to step back and say, this is a little bigger deal to my brother than I thought it was. Perhaps I should take this a little more seriously. I think that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bring somebody in. See 2 or 3 people walking in, you're definitely going to be like, whoa, let's figure this out. So I think that's a good point that it brings out. I'd melt into a puddle right there. For sure. But yes, maybe the reconciler can just start out with some encouragement, and that would be enough to get us going. So at this point, the book also makes the point of involving others helps protect our church. And I think this is, as you have a dispute with your brother, I think this is something that is important to keep in mind. That as this goes on and on, if you're unable to be reconciled, we're going through these steps, and you just keep going further and further. It is possible that this gets outside the church. It is possible that the church can be harmed in some ways. That the church could be slandered if this is not taken care of. I think it's an important part of going through these steps, going through this process, taking it seriously. Because the longer it goes on, undoubtedly, the more people are going to find out. Undoubtedly, people outside the church are going to find out. And then the church's name is hurt. It's hurt by that. As always, the quicker you can work on this issue, the quicker you can resolve it, the least amount of people that are involved, that is always the best way. And I think you see that in these steps here that we've talked about this morning.
In working out between Christians and working out between the world, it's almost greatly. It's definitely not the same. Because in my business life, 3 times as employees, we had to go to mediation to get the thing settled. And every time the mediator says, if I do my job, this is over, neither one of you are going to be happy. If I do the job, you're going to get some, he's going to get some, but you're never going to be happy. And that has been the case all 3 of those times. Whereas you do have a fight. I mean, it's reconciled, you're both. It's fine, you're moving on. You both feel good about it. It's a difference in the world. I just want everybody to be kind of happy with it. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I thought I was right all 3 times.
Not so much.
The other person's kind of happy and you're okay and move on. Not good.
Okay. Yeah, it's true.
It speaks to what's the goal. The goal of those is not reconciliation, right? It's settlement, yeah. It's part ways, what's everybody get. Which kind of goes back to, you said 2 Christians with soft hearts. That's kind of the premise of all this, right? It's the only way this works. And if that's one-sided, it probably doesn't work. And that's hard to accept.
Right.
But it's also probably true. Is that both both people gotta come into it, with the same goal, with the same faith.
Yeah, for sure.
And that could be one of the benefits of having a third party who is a wise spiritual person to see, you know, tell me if my heart is hard and so soft. Like, you know, you're putting a lot of time and energy into fighting this, and really, it doesn't matter that much. Is it worth breaking this relationship with your brother and staying the reputation of the church and all of these things, or is it more God glorifying? Just let yourself, you know, let yourself be wronged if you're wronged, or give in or compromise or whatever, what's going to bring God most glory. And I think that would be one of the benefits of having a third party there, is to look out for the hearts of the two involved in nature. They're both, their hearts kind of become hard towards that conflict.
Correct. Yeah, that's all good stuff, for sure. So we've gone through this process. You know, we've tried to solve it one-on-one. Didn't work. We brought 2 or 3 along with us. It doesn't work. Now the next step is that I said here is we tell it to the church. So what exactly does that mean? What does it mean that we're going to tell it to the church? Thankfully, we have 3 elders here. You can help with that. I mean, does that mean that an elder is going to get up in front of the church on Sunday morning and kind of say it all? Or does that mean, hey, maybe we need some encouragement with these brethren? What do you think that means? Tell it to the church.
I think a statement from the last.
Okay, I would agree. I'd say you're right.
Other Christians may have influence, but maybe some people may need to get involved if this is out of control. Some other people that have some influence here might need to step in, but we know, you know, have the ability to maybe help the people. And if, yeah, and if that doesn't work, then we should review this one and we'll take one.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the thought I have of sticking to this principle of it's best to resolve it with as few people as possible. You know, maybe this is bring in a few more people. Maybe they can be an encouragement. Maybe they can help. Maybe we didn't get exactly the right person on the 2 or 3, so let's get a few more. I agree. At some point, I guess it will have to come to that if one person just ultimately will not be reconciled. But yeah, I agree. I don't think it's immediately hit with the church, put it all out there. I think it's involving some key people and try to get some more encouragement out there, for sure.
Just a little story I can remember several years ago, Art told a story about his family and his congregation on Wednesday night. And they were trying to settle an issue between 2 brothers. And what they had done was that evening, after they were taking it before the church, they're letting each one present his case about the other. And I remember Art saying while one was standing up there presenting his case against this other brother, that he actually suffered a stroke or something and died. Now, whether stroke or not, I don't know, but it happened
Right.
right there. You know, and so, but obviously that's not the way to go about a situation like that. I mean, you can see the turmoil. It's not good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true.
I may have been reading too much into that verse about taking it toward the church, but to me there was an element of church leadership in there. So if you're 1 or 2 is not an elder and you can't reconcile with those people's help, then it goes, you know, take it to the elders. Or if it is 1 elder, you know, saying, hey, why don't you all discuss this and we'll keep discussing it, and then maybe we can all meet and see where we stand or how we can solve it. It just seems to me like that would carry a element of leadership somehow. And you take it before the church, not necessarily before the church, like standing up front, but
So we've reached this step of we're going to tell it to the church. So what is the church's role there? Once they've been involved, once they know, what do they need to be doing? What is their role there? I think we've certainly talked about encouragement. Obviously, meeting with these guys, whoever they are, trying to settle this. Um, at some point, like, are they required to make a decision? Like, what is the ultimate end of taking it to the church?
Like, if you're on individually, we all have that same responsibility. It's a elder responsibility. And what is always required if there's a situation, maybe somebody can have a different angle or a different, way of getting to somebody to understand where you're from. And individually, everybody's got to try their best to be involved, and if that doesn't work, then correction from the elders, from the church, that's the thing.
Yeah, I think so. And does this? I mean, what is the timeline? Does this happen immediately? How much time do we give? And I think as Christians, we know we're to be very patient, right? I mean, yeah, you can't let it drag on forever, but we're going to give our brother a chance here, right? We're going to give him a fair shot to try to have that resolved and try to have that reconciled. I think for sure.
Kind of alluded to it, that you get the third parties involved, you get the church involved. The role, it seems like, is a person or people to look out for the relationship versus either side. So, I'm impartial as far as, agreeing with one of you that I'm here to look out for your relationship and your brotherhood. And it seems like that would be even more so if the church was involved or the leaders were involved. And, you both think you're right, but what can we do in terms of, the relationship?
Absolutely. Very good.
Keep going back to, we're talking about kind of this path in terms of Matthew 18. And there might be other reasons that the elders decide that at some point the congregation needs to be aware of something going on with somebody. But in the context of Matthew 18, it's specifically about my brother sins against me. It's not about they're not coming to church or they're, any of the other things that we might think about. In that context, it's specifically that.
Agreed.
So that's kind of where we're dealing with. And it's not even that brothers aren't getting along. Very specifically, a brother sins against another brother. I think it's easy to get outside of those parameters and, talk about other issues. But the core issue here is brother sin. So we got that as that's the core issue. How do we make sure that stays the core issue? That all these relationship things are between you and me, between you and the church, all these other things are symptoms of that problem.
Right.
So that's anyway, it's easy for me to drift off and think about a lot of ancillary things, but hopefully that's the core issue.
Correct. No, I agree. Really good. I agree. So we've gone through this process. We've gone one-on-one. We've done 2 or 3 more. We've told the church. This brother will still not be reconciled no matter what we've done. We've been patient. We've been encouraging. We've tried everything we know to try. The next step is that we're to treat them as an unbeliever. Well, what does that mean? How do we treat someone who is an unbeliever? Someone who, when I think about an unbeliever, I think of someone who needs to be taught. Right? I think somebody needs further teaching. Someone who needs encouragement. Someone who needs patience. Someone who needs grace and love. certainly make someone in this position that we're talking about who needs probably some discipline and correcting. But they need it with grace and love, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. This is an unbeliever. What does it not mean? Talking about somebody who's an unbeliever, how are we not going to treat them? It's the first word I had down.
Kind and loving, understanding, and patient. We want this individual to restore the relationship with God. And our actions should be in such a way to help motivate that or establish that rather than just turn them off.
Yeah, we're not to be rude. We're not to be condescending. We're not here to punish them. We're not enacting revenge on them. So let's look at Romans 12:19. I think this is an important one. Somebody would read that, Romans 12:19.
Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.
Yeah, so we're not here for revenge. We're not here to take our own actions. We're not here to shame them, belittle them, bring them down. We still have the same goals of encouraging them to be reconciled with them, bring them back into the church family again, so that they're one with us, win our brother. That's the whole purpose of all this that we've talked about. That whatever the issue is, it can be resolved. That peace can take hold again. That we would gain our brother. That's the whole purpose of all of this. And even if we get to the point of having to take some kind of discipline, we're still going to have these attitudes toward them. The lesson talks a little bit about that there are some churches that won't do that. They won't take it that far. They won't have this level of discipline, and I think it's kind of sad. God says that He disciplines those that He loves. You can't get into this habit of just ignoring these conflicts. We talked about the reputation that can come upon the church, even from outside the community. And I think we see this same concept with raising our children. How often can it seem to be that it would just be easier if I would just say, let's let this one slide. Let's not deal with that today. Let's just move on and get through whatever we need to get through. And before you know it, that issue continues to grow and grow, and that becomes worse in our children, and it comes to the point where it's very difficult to correct or to get them back on the straight and narrow path. And I think that's the same way. I think it's the same way here. The further it goes on, the more difficult it's going to be to get them back. The more difficult it's going to be to correct them and to get them back before it gets out of hand. And it'll just continue to affect more and more people. We need to love our brother enough to discipline them in the moment and bring them back. And we talked about this. Let's look at Proverbs 3:11 and 12. Somebody would read that. Proverbs 3:11 and 12.
My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest His correction. For whom the Lord loves, He corrects, just as the father the son in whom He delights.
So we certainly have this principle of the Lord disciplines those He loves. We love our brethren. We will do that same thing. Hopefully we'll do it in a loving and graceful way, and a mechanism to win them back. And I also hope that, this is such an extreme measure that I hope we see that this doesn't happen a lot. God has given us this method here in Matthew 18, these steps to go through. And if we're dealing with two Christians, and their hearts are where they need to be, they've just kind of gotten a little out of sorts. I would think that we would not have to get to this point very often. This would be an extreme ending to this situation. We know God's methods work. He's given to us His methods. We've seen them work. And so if we're dealing with the type of people who want to follow God and want to be Christians, then I would think that getting to this point of treating them as an unbeliever, having to have some kind of discipline with them would be a very extreme situation and one that hopefully we don't have to deal with too often. But even if we do, God has still given us a way to be reconciled to Him. I think that's just an amazing thing to even think about. That through love and grace and wisdom and patience, at some point, no matter the cost, no matter what we might have to do, no matter how much we might have to give in, God has given us this, and hopefully at some point we can be reconciled with our brother and he'll come back.
Aaron, that's one of the verses that you shared, Revelation 3:19. You hear, I can't believe y'all can do that. God, love, that's just not something that chastening is something Jesus will do. This is Jesus speaking in Revelation 3:19, telling the way out of sin. So He said, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. The Lord did it. He thought it was the right thing to do. Let's get an example of it.
Absolutely, yes. He has set that example many times, and hopefully you've seen that in your own life at times when you've gotten a little, involved in a little out of ways. And we see that this one can have some good effect.
I think we mentioned this last board meeting, but verse 20 of Matthew 18 is, where two or three are gathered in my name, and there am I among them. We use that verse a lot, but the direct context is exactly what we're talking about. Jesus is very interested and present in those reconciliations.
Yeah, it's a great point. Jesus is there all the time. Absolutely. The book also mentions, and I thought this was a little interesting, that the gospel itself is a doctrine of peace. Right? I mean, that's what it is. It is a method of bringing about peace. And if we are true believers, if we are people who are wanting to follow God, then we are people who should be about peace. I mean, that's what this whole class is about. And so this idea of being in conflict with someone should be something that's far from us. Should not be something that we are comfortable being in, comfortable sitting in. I'm not comfortable sitting in this conflict because I am a person who is of peace. So I think because of that, we should always be desiring peace with our brothers. That should be where comfort for us is. It should be where we find ourselves. And I think that's important. I certainly think if you've got your worksheet there, we're out. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for your comments. They were awesome. Everybody's very involved. I appreciate that so much, especially being the sub. So Jonathan will be back Wednesday night, and he can pick up there. Thank you all.